All right, so this is a little bit unexpected. Normally, I mean, I haven't really uploaded here in a hot minute, and usually my content is more Plants vs Zombies related or something like that. But I'm a big fan of Pokemon, and today I am here to talk about my draft for the WPF World Pokemon Federation Season 17 Delta Division. That's right. I will be uploading some Pokemon Wi-Fi Draft League content, and I'm really excited to bring that to y'all. And it should be a lot of fun. Um, a note about quality before I really get into it is that it's finals week for me right now, or about to be finals week. I have a ton of stuff that I'm working on the side, aside from what I'm doing here. So things should be a little bit more polished after this draft analysis, but I did want to get this out just to explain my thoughts, put something out there so that you can kind of anticipate what I will be working on for the next couple months or so. All right, without further ado, let's just get right into it, and I'm going to start by talking about one, my place in the draft, and two, my draft picks. So I was second pick overall, which is pretty incredible, honestly. Being second pick gives you a lot of privilege in terms of what you are able to pick up, and there were a lot of really, really strong picks on the table that I had the option to get. Pokemon such as Dragapult, Iron Valiant, Enamorus with Terra for the record. All of those were eligible draft picks, and in my case here, I ended up going with Great Tusk as my round one pick. Now, why Great Tusk? Well, here's the deal. I am entering a very competitive Pokemon draft league where I expect to either be struggling every week or even just outright lose. And to me, I wanted to go with Pokemon that are consistent, Pokemon that were comfort picks. I'm not going into this thinking that I'll lose every battle, beforehand or anything, but I am expecting a big challenge for this. This is a big step up for me, and so Great Tusk being my round one pick is comfort and consistency for me. Great Tusk offers a lot to any team, looking at its base stats. Decent speed, especially with a Choice Scarf for a booster energy, that can really provide a lot. Fantastic physical bulk and a really good physical attack, along with just a really great offensive move pool with options like Ice Spinner and Supercell Slam for coverage. And the way I've drafted my team really allows some flexibility for Great Tusk. I can either bring it as more of an offensive Pokemon with options like Bulk Up or stuff like that, or I can use its defensive traits with Rapid Spin and stuff like that, Stealth Rock to just sort of be a backbone for my team, which is really, really nice. So I'm really excited to have Great Tusk on this team as my round one pick and as my sort of Pokemon that's going to lead me, hopefully, into a pretty strong season. Next, I ended up going with Greninja. A bunch of picks happened between now and then, so a lot of really, really strong Pokemon ended up going, but I was pretty floored to see that Greninja is not only able to Terrasilize, but it is able to have all of its abilities. So you have Protean and you also have Battle Bond, which is pretty excellent. It gives Greninja not only a lot of immediate threat with the Terra, but also endgame threat as well with the ability to get a free speed, special attack, and even attack boost. Greninja has some pretty great utility with options like Spikes and Toxic Spikes, Taunt. You have really solid offensive coverage with being able to Terrastalize on top of options like Ice Beam, Surf, Grass Knot, all of that. So Greninja, I think, is going to be a really, really great Pokemon for me, both on the offensive and defensive sides of the spectrum. So really, really great pickup. Really, really happy that I'm getting the opportunity to use something like this, and I'm excited to see what I can come up with to make Greninja put in some work here. Physical sets are a consideration as well, especially with Sword Stance plus Battle Bond, but who knows? All right, so my first two picks, going in, I thought, or going into round three, I was thinking, okay, this is really, really strong. Offensively, defensively, really good balance. I have a little bit of a grass weakness that's kind of budding, if you'll notice, but as well as fairy, but those aren't super huge. And I mean, those I still have like a ton of the draft left to help with that. So my next pick ended up being Zapdos. Zapdos, I wanted a ground immunity. I wanted a really, really great electric type Pokemon. And this is a Pokemon that I just haven't had the opportunity to use in a minute. Losing Defog does kind of suck for Zapdos because it means I'm going to have to rely on Great Tusk to be a bit of a hazard remover more. But you have options like Volt Switch, you have Static for priority, Thunder Wave, Roost. You have really great offensive potential with Hurricane and Heat Wave and Thunderbolt. So Zapdos, I think, can do a lot on both the offensive and defensive spectrums. There's some flexibility there, while also being able to provide really useful resistances for my team. So that's ultimately why I felt like Zapdos was a really great pickup here. Again, definitely does suck that it lacks some options like Defog and Toxic, but overall, I think Zapdos is actually a really exciting pick and one that I'm very happy that I was able to get. Alright, my next two picks, my rounds 4 and 5, I knew that I really needed to start filling out some of the cores on my team. I think I definitely picked up some solid options, but without cores, it's kind of difficult to make a really good backbone of a team, and so I wanted to make sure that I got a good Steel type and a reasonable Fairy type Pokemon before all of the options were gone, essentially. And so Metagross ended up being my round 4 pick. Really, really happy with Metagross. It's a Pokemon that really got a big glow up in Generation 9, now that it has access to some better stab options in Heavy Slam and Psychic things. Some utility and knockoff is really nice too. Really, Metagross just has a lot going for it in terms of its offense as well as its utility. Being a Steel type with pretty solid bulk opens the door for rock sets, more offensive sets with agility, iron defense. Doesn't get body press, which is a little bit of a shame, but we make do. And you know, it also gets access to Meteor Beam, so there could be some really fun strategies with that. Ultimately, Metagross really just felt like a Pokemon that I can add to my team to, one, cover the very budding grass, ice, fairy weaknesses that my team was building, but to also just serve as a Pokemon that I can be flexible about, kind of in a similar way to Great Tusk, where I can either bring some more defensive sets or some more offensive sets, kind of depending on the matchup. So really, really awesome Pokemon. Really excited to bring it, of course. I mean, there's not a Pokemon on this team that I'm not excited to bring, but Metagross is one that I'm really, really happy I have. Honestly, the first 4 picks are ones that I felt like I did a really good job in drafting. Really great mix of offensive and defensive profiles kind of across the board. Maybe a little bit frailer on the special side, but my round 5 pick in Pheasantipity does really help to shore that up with its really, really solid bulk, as well as access to a lot of awesome utility through Toxic Chain, through access to Toxic itself, has other options. It has some screen potential, I believe. Yeah, light screen, no reflect, but you know. U-turn for pivoting is really nice. Calm Mind, it can be a decent Calm Mind win condition later in the game as well, which is cool. Ultimately, Pheasantipity really was drafted to help with the weak special offense, or not special offense, special defense on my team. My special offense is anything but the special defense on my team is a little bit lacking, and with Pheasantipity that really helps to shore that up, as well as provide a Fairy type and a grounded poison, so I don't have to worry about, you know, Toxic Spikes or, you know, dragons ruining my day as much. Pheasantipity also really fits well on this team because the rest of the team can kind of make up for its weaknesses pretty well, being that I already have Pokemon to take hits from ground types and psychic types and steel types, that sort of thing. So Pheasantipity, I think, fits really, really well on my draft, and although it doesn't have as much utility through the likes of things like toxic spikes or things that can kind of affect the game outside of the immediate state. It still has a lot going for it that I am a big fan of, and I'm really excited to bring Pheasantipity um, into some matches here. Next is Infernape, and Infernape is a Pokemon that I don't think I've actually drafted before, so this is a new experience for me. My thought process in picking Infernape was I wanted another Pokemon offensively that can function. It could be either physical or special. I wasn't too picky about it at this stage, but Infernape can do both, which is really nice. Adds to that sort of unpredictability. I really wanted a good Scarfer that can also help with, shoring up some type weaknesses on this team. At this point, I don't really have a grass weakness at all, which is nice. Although, this is the third ground weak Pokemon I've drafted in a row, so not ideal. But again, I wanted a Pokemon that was kind of fast that I knew I could bring to some games to just kind of plug holes either offensively or provide some utility. I think Infernape actually has a surprising amount of utility that people may not realize with access to moves like Knockoff, like Stealth Rock, U-Turn, Will-O-Wisp, Stealth Rock, Slack Off for recovery, Encore. Like, there's a lot in the way of utility that Infernape has outside of its Unka Bunga offensive sets that I think I would really like to explore and really like to get the chance to use. So I'm really excited to. I've said I'm really excited count somewhere. I will not be editing this hardly at all, but put an I'm excited count somewhere in your head, and have that. So looking forward to using Infernape for sure, especially with some of the new tools that I got this generation. Although the draft I have doesn't necessarily support things like Drain Punch super duper well, it is still cool that I have Infernape as an option here to kind of plug some holes offensively. The remainder of my team is honestly more or less just kind of filler around these Mons. I wanted a bunch of Pokemon that can help with ground weakness so that I'm not bringing a bunch of ground weak Pokemon every game, as well as just whatever other bits of utility I can eke out of my team. So Vikavolt was the next Pokemon that I ended up drafting. I drafted it for a ground immunity as well as access to Sticky Web, and that's pretty much it. It's not one of my Terra Captains. It would be a pretty good lower tier Terra Captain just because being a Pokemon with Levitate and having Vikavolt's honestly not terrible bulk does make it pretty annoying, but I was able to get another Terra Captain that I think is just a lot better. So Vikavolt is, here to provide webs, here to be a ground immunity. Otherwise, it's not like super duper exciting, but it is a cool Pokemon, and maybe it'll have the chance to shine this season. We'll see. Hydrapple is next, and this is actually the other Terra Pokemon that I drafted. So my two Terra Captains are Greninja and Hydrapple. Hydrapple is a Pokemon that I just love. I think Hydrapple is just really, really cool. Grass Dragon isn't that amazing of a typing, all things considered, but it does finish both my Fire, Water, Grass and Fairy Dragon Steel cores in one, which is kind of cool. And with the ability to Terrastalize, I can get out of that typing if I want to and plug some holes in the team depending on where the difficulties in the matchup are. Hydrapple has a lot going for it in terms of both offensive and more utility-focused sets. Access to Nasty Plot can turn it into an offensive threat with really high base power moves like the Draco Meteor, like the Earth Power, like the Leaf Storm, for instance, or Fickle Beam even. Its defensive utility mostly comes through its typing. Access to Regenerator as a really great ability, and then Recover to just be really, really difficult to kill. But there are some other things like Infestation, like Dragon Tail that, maybe in the right matchups could see some play and could really make Hydrapple more of a disruptor than just something that sits in front of you, doesn't die, dishes out some pretty good damage with its pretty decent coverage. So really cool Pokemon. and one that I'm really excited to have as part of my defensive lineup, especially as a Terra captain to give it that much more flexibility. Lantern is next, and I actually, Hydrapple was a Pokemon that I picked up in Grace. I originally had Sinistcha here, and then I had something else over Lantern and Rotom, I believe. No, it was one of these two. One of these two I picked intentionally. It may have been Lantern, and then I picked up Rotom and Grace. I don't remember. All I know is I have a Lantern here, and Lantern is interesting. I wanted to have a Water-type Pokemon that I could use more for its defensive profile, and yes, this does make it the third electric type I have on my draft, but if you look at the electric types I've drafted, it actually doesn't have that much anti-synergy, which is kind of interesting. Uh, this is the first electric type I've drafted that's actually ground weak, but it's not weak to rock. It resists, or it's weak to grass, but the other electric types can pick that up. It provides an ice resistance, which is really nice. It's immune to electric, which is pretty cool. So it's a really interesting Pokemon that has some defensive merit, mostly thanks to its water typing in combination with its electric typing. Flip Turn was a pretty cool buff it got in Scarlet and Violet that gives you an alternative to Volt Switch that isn't blocked by ground types. So it does make Lantern, yeah, you do get chipped by things like Rocky Helmet or Risk Flame Body or stuff like that, but it prevents the opponent from blocking your pivoting as easy, which is something that's really nice for Lantern. Lantern losing Heal Bell is also something that's rather unfortunate for it, but at the very least, you still have a lot of other things that make Assault Vest sets pretty worthwhile, with options like Discharge and Scald to spread status, which it's honestly a miracle that it gets Scald anyway. And who's to say that more offensive sets with the likes of Agility or even Curse are off the table? I think there's a fair bit of room for creativity with Lantern here, and though I don't expect this to be a Pokemon that comes super duper often, the fact that I have a bulkier water type than Greninja overall is something that I think my team is really going to benefit from. So yeah, just a really cool Pokemon, one that I think does kind of get screwed a little bit in the move pool reduction from Scarlet and Violet, but it's one that I think is pretty compelling, so I'm really excited to have this. And lastly, we have Rotom, and yes, this is the fourth Ghost type I've picked on my team, which is very, very funny to me that, or not Ghost type, electric type, that I have 4 electric types, but I think what's more striking is the fact that they don't really affect the overall, weaknesses of my team that much. If anything, I think having all these electric types has made my team a little bit more rock weak than it has ground weak. 3 of my electric types are immune to ground, and in the case of Rotom, I really wanted it as a faster Pokemon that can block Rapid Spin and keep up hazards while also providing some utility through the likes of Thunder Wave, through the likes of Will-O-Wisp, and access to Trick with a Choice Scarf or something like that. Rotom has a surprising amount of utility to it, and although it's not the best as a late game cleaning style of Pokemon, because it lacks a super fast speed stat, only base 91, that's not super crazy. At the very least, being able to take hits to block Rapid Spin and be able to threaten a lot of spinners with Will-O-Wisp is pretty nice. Plus, it has Pain Split with TMs coming back in the Indigo Disc. That's kind of old news at this point, but it is worth noting that this Pokemon does have a little bit more in the way of longevity than it did before, which makes it a little bit more compelling to draft. Of all the electric types on my team, I think Rotom is actually the one I've drafted the most, specifically regular Rotom. I've always found it to be a pretty solid budget electric type that can provide what a lot of electric types do for the team, while also carrying a nice ghost typing that makes some Pokemon just a lot more frustrated in dealing with it. So yeah, just overall, cool Pokemon, and there are some things about my Rotom pick here that maybe I could have had a different Ghost type, but I was compelled to draft Rotom just for the amount of utility and the speed that it brings, even though I don't necessarily need the speed at this point. It occupies a similar speed tier to Great Tusk, but and that's kind of weird to think about. But yeah, I still like Rotom, and I think it has some potential here. So that is my team. Overall thoughts on this team are that I like how offensive it is while still having a lot of sturdiness through the likes of Hydrapple, through the likes of Lantern and Pheasantipity and Metagross and Great Tusk. All of these Pokemon have ways to either push the opponent through some offensive pressure or to be annoying and spread status. It really feels difficult for me to say that there's any Pokemon on this team that's super duper passive. But it's also difficult for me to say that there's a Pokemon on this team that is like crazy frail that I don't have a way to really compensate for. Greninja is not the only water type on this team. I have other water types that can help with that. I have a 4-time Psychic Resist to help with Psychic moves. I have Lantern to, make up for some of Greninja's stuff. Infernape just kind of fits really well defensively into my team, being able to take grass hits, bug hits pretty well, being a good offensive fire type to really synergize with Pokemon like Greninja and a Hydrapple and Metagross and these guys just to be able to put on some offensive pressure. I think the amount of pivot on this team is really nice. I like it with Greninja, with Zapdos, with Pheasantipity, with Infernape, with Lantern, Vikavolt, Rotom. Like, there's just so much in the way of pivoting that I have with this team, and there's so much that I have with access to moves like Stealth Rock, Rapid Spin, Sticky Web. I do have a Spiker and Greninja. It's not the most hazard setty team overall, and there will undoubtedly be some options that I would like to have more of on this team, but at the very least, I think this team has a really great mix of reliability while also having a lot of offensive potential and ways to stop my opponents to where I think it has potential to do really well in this. So that's my draft analysis for the WPF Season 17. First game will be up next week, so yeah, be excited for that. I will probably have a little bit more polish in these moving forward, but because it is finals for me, I have a bunch of stuff that I'm working on. I do just kind of have to throw something together pretty quickly, but I hope that you enjoyed, at the very least, listening to me ramble about why I picked these Pokemon, and if you have any comments or any suggestions for improvements or things like that, I'm all ears. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you all in the next battle.